From a small Spanish fishing town to the global stage of Paris, the story of Balenciaga is one of vision, reinvention, and controversy. Cristóbal Balenciaga, once called the master of us all, transformed fashion with daring designs that challenged tradition and redefined elegance. After decades of silence, the house rose again, reshaped by Nicolas Ghesquière's futuristic edge, and later revolutionized by Demna's streetwear dominance. Today, Balenciaga sits at the center of both fame and debate, admired for its innovation, yet questioned for its risks. This is not just the history of a fashion brand. It's the untold journey of how Balenciaga became an icon that continues to shape culture across generations. Cristobal Balenciaga's story begins in a small fishing town in Spain, far away from the glamorous runways of Paris. Born in 1895, he wasn't raised in luxury, but in the humble workshop of his mother, a seamstress who stitched clothes for the wealthy women of the region. From a young age, Cristobal was fascinated by fabric, not just how it looked, but how it could be shaped, stretched, and transformed. By the time he was a teenager, he could design and sew pieces so precise that local nobility trusted him with their wardrobes. Unlike other designers of his time, who often relied on sketches sent to tailors, Balenciaga mastered every detail himself, from sketching to cutting to sewing. This rare talent made him different. It was here in the quiet streets of his hometown that the boy who would later be called the master of us all first found his voice in fashion. By the time Cristobal Balenciaga was in his early 20s, his skills had already made him a local legend. With the support of wealthy patrons who admired his talent, he opened his first boutique in San Sebastian, Spain, in 1919. His creations stood out because they weren't imitations of Paris fashion. They were bold, original, and built with unmatched precision. Word spread quickly, and soon he expanded to Madrid and Barcelona, where Spain's elite couldn't get enough of his designs. Even in those early years, Balenciaga was breaking rules, reshaping silhouettes, and daring to imagine clothing in ways no one else had. His boutiques became sanctuaries for elegance and innovation, attracting royalty and high society. But the Spanish Civil War forced him to close his doors and look beyond his homeland. That decision would lead him to Paris, the world's fashion capital, and change his destiny forever. In 1937, Cristobal Balenciaga arrived in Paris, the ultimate stage for fashion. The city was already crowded with giants like Chanel and Dior, yet Balenciaga's debut collection stunned critics and clients alike. His designs weren't flashy imitations of Parisian trends. They carried a sculptural quality, almost like art carved from fabric. Dresses floated with grace, yet held a sharp architectural structure that no one had seen before. Even during the chaos of World War II, Balenciaga's atelier thrived, attracting aristocrats, film stars, and even royalty who risked everything just to wear his creations. Unlike many designers, he never followed trends. He invented them. Paris quickly recognized that Balenciaga wasn't just another designer. He was a force rewriting the rules of elegance. With each collection, he gained more power, setting the stage for a revolution in women's fashion that would define the decades to come. Balenciaga was not content with simply making beautiful dresses. He wanted to reshape how women experience fashion. In the 1950s, while others emphasized tight waists and hourglass figures, Balenciaga went in the opposite direction. He introduced the sack dress, a bold silhouette that flowed freely without clinging to the body. Then came the baby doll dress and the balloon jacket, designs that challenged tradition and redefined elegance. His creations allowed women to move with comfort and confidence, proving that luxury didn't have to mean restriction. Fellow designers were amazed. Christian Dior himself admitted, "Balenciaga is the master of us all." Clients adored his work because it felt modern, liberating, and timeless. Each design wasn't just clothing, it was architecture in motion. With every stitch, Balenciaga was rewriting the definition of style, paving the way for a golden era where his name became synonymous with pure innovation. By the mid-1950s, Cristóbal Balenciaga had reached the height of his power. His Paris salon became a temple of style, where the world's most influential women, from European royalty to Hollywood stars, waited eagerly for his latest designs. Unlike other houses that relied on publicity, Balenciaga maintained an air of secrecy. Fashion shows were private, and photographs were strictly controlled, which only added to the allure. Every season, his collections revealed daring shapes: the cocoon coat, the tunic dress, the empire line, each a shockwave that inspired rivals and cemented his reputation as fashion's true innovator. While Christian Dior captured headlines with the new look, insiders whispered that Balenciaga's mastery of cut and form was unmatched. This was his golden age, a period when he wasn't just designing clothes but shaping culture. Balenciaga had proven himself not simply a designer, but a legend in the making. In 1968, the fashion world was stunned when Cristóbal Balenciaga announced he was closing his maison. At the very peak of his influence, when others would cling to fame, he quietly stepped away. Balenciaga had always been a perfectionist, and as ready-to-wear began replacing haute couture, he felt fashion was moving in a direction that no longer inspired him. Rather than compromise his vision, he chose silence. His departure left clients heartbroken and rivals in disbelief. 4 years later, in 1972, Cristóbal Balenciaga passed away in Spain, leaving behind a legacy of unmatched artistry. For a time, the house of Balenciaga seemed frozen, like a masterpiece sealed in history. Yet his influence lingered. Every designer who came after borrowed from his techniques and ideas. Though the doors of his atelier were shut, the legend of the man called the Master only grew stronger with time. After Balenciaga's death in 1972, the house that once defined elegance slipped into silence. For years, the brand existed as a shadow of its former glory, kept alive only through perfumes and distant memories of Cristobal's genius. The fashion world had moved on, yet whispers of his unmatched skill never faded. It wasn't until the late 1980s and 1990s that the Balenciaga name was revived, cautiously reintroduced to a new generation. Designers struggled at first to carry the weight of such a legendary legacy. How do you modernize a house built on perfection? Slowly, through experimentation and bold risks, Balenciaga began to find its rhythm again. Though the revival wasn't immediate, it laid the groundwork for what was to come. The house was no longer just a ghost of couture's past. It was preparing for a rebirth that would shock the fashion industry once more. In 1997, a young French designer named Nicolas Ghesquière stepped into the nearly forgotten house of Balenciaga, and everything changed. With fresh vision and daring creativity, he transformed the brand into one of fashion's most talked about names. Ghesquière blended futuristic shapes with street influences, reviving the architectural spirit of Cristobal while making it feel modern. His designs, from the iconic motorcycle bag to sharp sculpted jackets, captured the imagination of editors, celebrities, and everyday fans alike. Suddenly, Balenciaga wasn't just a relic of haute couture history. It was the definition of cool. Fashion critics praised him as a genius, while shoppers lined up for his edgy, wearable creations. Under Ghesquière, Balenciaga went from obscurity to a powerhouse once more. He proved that the brand could honor its past while fearlessly stepping into the future, cementing Balenciaga's place in the new millennium. When Demna Gvasalia took over as creative director in 2015, Balenciaga entered an entirely new era. Known for his rebellious approach, Demna blurred the lines between high fashion and streetwear, creating oversized hoodies, chunky sneakers, and ironic designs that turned luxury into a cultural statement. Pieces like the Triple S sneakers and logo-covered hoodies didn't just sell, they went viral, dominating Instagram feeds and sparking global trends. For younger generations, Balenciaga suddenly felt fresh, bold, and unapologetically different. Celebrities embraced the look, and streetwear fans proudly wore Balenciaga alongside jeans and sneakers, making the brand part of everyday style rather than untouchable couture. While some critics questioned the shift, Demna's vision connected with a world that craved authenticity and disruption. Balenciaga had once again reinvented itself, proving that the house built by a Spanish master could thrive in the language of modern street culture. Today, Balenciaga stands at the crossroads of global fame and constant scrutiny. Under Demna, the brand has mastered the art of cultural relevance, pushing boundaries with daring runway shows, viral products, and collaborations that dominate headlines. Yet with fame has come controversy. Campaigns have sparked backlash, designs have stirred debate, and critics question whether Balenciaga has gone too far in its pursuit of shock and reinvention. Still, the brand remains a magnet for attention, embraced by celebrities, athletes, and Gen Z fans who see it as more than fashion. It's a lifestyle statement. From Cristobal's quiet Spanish beginnings to Demna's world-shaking streetwear, Balenciaga's journey is one of constant reinvention. Its untold story is not just about clothes, but about the tension between tradition and disruption, art and controversy. And perhaps that is why Balenciaga continues to matter, because it refuses to ever play it safe.